So right now, we've already learned how to solve one-step inequalities. We're going to learn how to solve two-step inequalities. And once again, we're going to follow the same procedures as if this was an equation. So if our equation had two steps, how would we solve it? We're going to do exactly the same thing. So what we have here is an inequality. And if that were an equal sign, ask yourself, what would I do? Well, I would bring my dotted line down there. So remember to do the same thing that I did to one side to the other side. There is my variable. It is being multiplied by 3. But first I need to take care of the fact that it is having 11 taken away from it. So I'm going to add 11 to both sides. When we do that, the negative 11 and the positive 11 cancel each other out. My 3x comes down here. So now I have 3x. On the other side, negative 20 plus 11 is negative 9. When I look at that, now I'm going to take care of that coefficient. Multiplying x by 3, that is my coefficient. I'm going to divide by 3, a positive 3, to get the x all by itself. When I divide 3 divided by 3, that becomes 1. So I have 1x. Negative 9 divided by 3 is negative 3. Since this is a greater than or equal to sign, I'm going to have a closed dot, and greater than, it's telling me to go this way with my line. Same thing over here, except you'll notice that my coefficient, so once again, if it was an equation, what would we do? We're going to drop that line. We're going to take care of this positive 14 first, this adding of the 14. So I have negative 2 times x, but then I'm also adding 14 to the x. I'm going to take care of adding the 14 in. I'm going to subtract the 14 out. That cancels on this side. Negative 18 plus negative 14 gives me negative 32 over here. My negative 2x comes down. Now I need to take care of the fact that I'm multiplying the x by negative 2. So I'm going to divide it by negative 2. Negative 2 divided by negative 2 is going to give me a positive 1. And negative 32 divided by negative 2 is going to give me a positive 16. What you'll notice is right here, because I divided by a negative 2, I have to flip my sign. So now I have 16 is included, and I shade to the left. So why is it important to identify the coefficient of x? Well, if it's a positive coefficient, I don't flip the sign. But if it's a negative coefficient with x, then I do need to flip that sign at the end, or my answer is not going to be true and valid. Now, you may be saying to yourself, but in the first example, we had some negatives. So why didn't we flip the sign here? Well, I didn't flip the sign because it was the negative 11 here. I was subtracting 11. But my coefficient itself was positive. So the only thing that flips the sign, the only thing that makes that greater than sign become a less than or a less than become greater than is the coefficient that is negative. So we have some examples down here, and I encourage you, if you feel comfortable, pausing it right here, trying these out, and then coming back to it to see if you got it correct. And if you notice here, when we identify my variable and my coefficient, it is indeed negative. So when I divide by a negative number, when I bring that sign down, it's not going to point the same way anymore. It's going to get turned around. It's just a greater than sign, so open circle, it's a greater than. And that's what my graph looks like. Doesn't matter which side My variable's on there. I have a positive 8, so I'm going to subtract it. Get rid of it. My coefficient here is a positive 5. 43 minus 8 is 35. Divide by positive 5. Since I'm dividing by a positive, this is going to come straight down and no change. I want to read this from the variable. So the variable says that y needs to be less than or equal to 7. Close circle because it has that line. And it's actually telling me that it's less than. If I were to flip this around, I've got y. Y is less than or equal to 7. We have a few more examples here on the back page that I'm going to work through. Now you're like, that doesn't look like a coefficient. It's dividing the x, but that is indeed the number that is either dividing or multiplying the variable. And that will be the last thing we take care of them, because I'm dividing by it right now to undo it. I'm going to multiply by it. And that is why we'll end up flipping the sign here. We need to take care of the addition of the 33 first. And 30 minus 33 is negative 3. Now I'm dividing x by a negative 3. In order to undo that, I'm going to multiply by negative 3. And as we've talked about before, this is showing itself as a fraction, so I'm going to go ahead and write my negative 3 as a fraction. Any number is a fraction with a 1 under it. Over here, I don't need to do that because negative 3 wasn't a fraction over here. So negative 3 times negative 3, positive 9. My 3's over here are going to cancel out to 1, so I get the x all by itself. Because I multiplied by a negative 3, when this sign comes down, it's actually going to flip. So I have x, remember to read from the variable, x is less than or equal to 9, which I could also write that way. Filled in circle because of the less than or equal to part. And the less than tells me to go to the left. Next problem over here. I need to add 20 to both sides. My variable is being divided again, but this time it's being divided by a positive number, which means I'm going to multiply by a positive number, which means I do not flip the sign. It doesn't matter that my answer is negative. That does not matter at all. The only thing that matters is that I multiplied by a positive number. So I have y is less than negative 6. Open circle because it doesn't have that line underneath for equal to. And it's going to go that way. Our last problem down here is a word problem. A magician's assistant makes $10.60 an hour. If he has already saved $53.70, how many more hours does he need to work to save at least $165? So the amount saved needs to be greater than or equal to 165, because I want to save at least $165. So what we know so far is that we've already saved $53.70, and we know that they make $10.60 an hour. So since it's each hour making $10.60, $10.60 times h. And the h is going to represent how many more hours they need to work. Well, if I've saved this and I'm going to save some more, I'm going to add those together to find my total saved. My coefficient is positive, so So I'm not going to have to worry about flipping that sign. I am going to need to worry about lining up my decimals. My last step there is I need to get the h by itself. Well, it's being multiplied by 1060, so we're going to divide by 1060. 1060 divided by 1060 gives me a 1 h. And I find out that the magician's assistant will need to work at least 10.5 hours more. And that will get them to that $165 they were trying to save.